Hello, my name is James Murray. I made this presentation for my history capstone class, and I made it for my research paper that I did on Russian military plans in World War I for their preparation and mobilization. My thesis of the paper is that Russia's plan failed in World War I because of slow mobilization, an overestimate of forces, a conflict between government and military leaders, and a lack of heavy artillery. I came to this thesis kind of by reading a couple books and a few monographs about World War One, and then I specifically focused on Russia because of some assignments I'd had in a past history class. And so that's kind of what made me decide on this thesis to argue those specific points. Some of the things I learned about the mobilization of Russia is first that Russia was not doing too well economically, and so they had a treaty with France where France would give them funds to build things like railroads to the eastern frontier, so that way they could attack Germany if France and Germany became a war. And Russia's main part of the treaty was really just to go to war with anyone France went to war with to add pressure from the other side of Europe. A big problem, though, with this is that Russia was very focused on expanding into Asia also because it was the Russian Empire. They were very imperialistic. And so their first railroad that came from the treaty with France was actually more towards the southern side of the empire instead of towards the western side bordering Germany and Austria-Hungary. The overestimation of forces, Russia was seen as this really great power with just so many men, so much land as well. But they had actually recently lost the Russo-Japanese War with the Japanese while trying to expand further into Asia in about 1905. And so they were still kind of recovering from that. And so the overestimation of forces came from other countries like France as well as Germany, thinking that Russia was really a greater power than it was at the time. The next concept was artillery. Germany was great at embracing artillery and also probably the biggest industry provider of artillery, and so they provided a lot of artillery to Austria-Hungary, their ally as well. And Russia, after losing the Russo-Japanese War, did have plans for starting the production of artillery, but their plans weren't going to be put into place until about 1918, about 4 years after World War One started. Of course, once World War One started, they started hastening that. However, they were still trying to produce railroads as well to mobilize to Eastern Germany and Austria-Hungary. And so they kind of came in at a disadvantage in artillery, similar to the French did actually, when compared to Germany and Austria-Hungary, which showed the same problem as the French did, is just really embracing new war concepts instead of staying in the past. Another significant part that led to Russia's plan failing was a very big conflict between diplomats and military leaders, including the Tsar. The biggest question was about mobilization, of course, because mobilization effectively meant starting the war. One of the biggest questions would be whether it was a partial mobilization or a full mobilization, whether to send the whole army there or to send a part of the army to Eastern Germany and Eastern Austria-Hungary. Another question was to when, and the main reason this question came about was the telegrams between Wilhelm and the Tsar. They were second cousins, I believe, and because of that, they had a somewhat close relationship as they had both risen to power. And the Tsar delayed some mobilization by a couple days because of the telegrams with his cousin Nicky, and that led to a slower mobilization. So Russia did fulfill its treaty obligations by declaring war on Austria-Hungary and Germany, which is what was part of the treaty with the French. However, it was a great disappointment in the Great War. The Battle of Tannenberg is a notable failure, and it directly or indirectly led to the Russian Revolution, where the monarchy and the empire is really overthrown. And one could argue that it's a direct result of the failure of World War One, but there were also other outlying factors to that.